world, this world that confuses us, and he gets us to turn back to look at him in different ways. And that's the answer. That's the solution. No matter which problem you run into, the solution is always to look up and let that, like Stephen. I think of Stephen looking up at the glory of heaven while he's being prepared to be stoned to death. So good story. Good story. Okay. Allergies. I'm not sick. Okay, we left off in Revelation chapter 6 last week, not 9, but chapter 6. And we were in the process of going through the seals being opened by the Lamb, the worthy Lamb, and we had just read 5 and 6, and started talking about this black horse and rider who provides the famine and the lack of sustainment. It represents an inability of man to satisfy his own needs. In other words, if you can't get water, if you can't grow food, if you can't take care of your body, then you will perish. And that's this force, this judgment is represents that. And as I spoke last time, some people look at all of this as symbolic, and they put it in whatever time frame that fits their concept of the end times, and some people take it more literally, and that's for each of us to decide. Because there is no grading sheet. In school, when you take a test, and then the teacher would get the grading sheet and grade it, see what you got right, what you got wrong. That grading sheet isn't here. It's up in heaven. We can't see it until after we leave here. So it's not. But a smart person told me recently that people that find symbology in the Bible are required to give you some sort of a definition or indication of what that symbology means. In other words, if I say these words aren't what they really say, it's symbolic language, well, then give me your understanding of what the symbolism stands for. What does it represent? You can't just say, well, you discount it because it's symbolic. Well, no, you either got to accept it as written, or you have to come up with what does the symbolism stand for? What does it mean? So anyway, the black horse, the scales. Whenever something is scarce, you portion it out. If you only have 3 ounces of chicken and you got 3 people eating, you try to measure it out so that each one gets a fair share. Scales kind of gives you an indication that the scarcities are being measured out in some way. It gives us a kind of an insight as to what the famine could mean, because it says a darius for a quart of wheat. I looked it up. As far as I can tell, I'm not a cook, so I assume you make bread out of wheat. And wheat has about 1,400 calories for a quart of wheat. That's what you would get if you prepared it to eat. Well, that 1,400 calories is not enough for a man that's working hard labor for a day. I mean, that would be considered a pretty severe diet for an average man. So a darius is a average man's wage, and it'll buy 1,400 calories of wheat, which isn't enough to sustain him going to work, not counting the other expenses of life, shoes, clothes, And if he has a family, then he's sharing that's 1,400 calories with a wife and or kids. So you have to go to barley, which is normally considered livestock food. You know, people would eat wheat and they would feed barley to the animals, but you could get 3 quarts for a Darius, a man of an average day's wage. You know, if we say an average wage today is $15 an hour, which may be a little low in Oklahoma, but there's a lot of people make less than $15 an hour. But $15 an hour for 8 hours would be $120. So what it's saying is food, a quart of food, less than a day's worth of food, costs $120. That would be, you know, basically you're going to starve to death. It's going to be a slow process to till you literally starve to death. So that's one of the judgments, one of the things that are going to come upon man during the tribulation times. It says something about the oil and the wine. Do not harm the oil and the wine. Sound system, or is it
Sound system?
Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
There's several different, I've seen several different commentaries that have a different viewpoint on the do not harm the oil and the wine. What one is that, you know, it shows that, well, the wealthy, they still have their oil and wine, even though the poor can't get enough wheat or barley to live on. That's one interpretation. I don't think that explains why it says do not harm the oil and the wine. I think more in line with some of the other commentaries that say that whatever the famine cause is, in other words, the crops aren't growing. Every year you have to plant wheat. We have some areas to plant 2 crops of wheat every year, summer and winter, or fall and spring, whatever. But anyway, you have to plant it. Every season you have to plant it. And if God gives you all the elements, water, sunshine, good soil, it grows and you have a crop and you have stuff to eat. If the crop fails, you're just out of luck. You have nothing. You have to wait till the next growing season and hope it works better. But a vineyard, it grows, you don't have to plant it every year. It grows years and years and years. Same way with, so olive trees. You don't have to plant an olive tree every year. So when it says do not harm the oil and the wine, whatever is causing the famine, the lack of food, is for those crops that come in each year, not the crops that are permanent, like the olive trees and the wine. I think that explanation gives a better overall understanding of what it's saying. Many famines over history have been caused by political upheavals. That's actually the primary cause of most famines in history. So they're man-made. The current war in Ukraine and with Russia is causing food shortages right now. I handed something out last week. Not only is that area a big bread basket for much of that side of the earth, but they also produce key ingredients to make fertilizer that's used here to grow our stuff. So that little war between in that little country is causing worldwide disruptions in food. And there's predictions that it's going to be very severe next year because of it. And remember that the prior seal was the red horse. And the red horse's purpose was to create war between men, between countries. So the red horse comes along and creates wars, and then the black horse delivers the famines, which is a result of the wars. So we see, I'm not saying that what we see in the world today is the Great Tribulation, but I'm saying that we see an example of how war leads to famine. We see global inflation, supply line disruptions, pandemic lockdowns. We see a lot of things going on in the world today that are significant. I haven't seen anything like this pandemic where people are locked in their, millions of people locked in their buildings with their relatives dying on the couch and can't get them hauled off for weeks at a time. I remember back a couple of years ago, it was pretty drastic what was going on. Matthew 24:7, where Jesus gives us kind of a summary preview of Revelation. It reads, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. But, and I think this is important, this is God's judgment on humanity, the earth, mankind. That's where we're at. And when you talk about food stuff, what's the most important ingredient or variable in food being grown for people on earth? The water, fertilizer, soil, sun. I would argue it's God. God's blessing gives us food to eat. Without his blessing, there will be nothing to eat, no matter what man does. So at the bottom line, if there's famine, it's because God has not, in the desert, God rose manna up from the sand of the desert. Didn't need anybody to plant it or care for it. He provided food in the desert. And when he decides not to provide food, there's nothing we can do to change it. It's not going to happen. So, any discussion on the black horse?
Right, throw something in there. God can work a couple different ways. He can do the miraculous. The Bible's littered with him doing the miraculous, as you said, the manna. It was miraculous. Different things. Jesus, the 5,000, it's miraculous. But he can also do things. When we look at the setup that God gave when they entered the land, how he told them to cooperate, how he told them to worship him. He promised blessing. And you're talking about political disruption. We got a spirit of division in our country today. And God doesn't always have to do the miraculous. Sometimes it's just a matter of us not listening to the way he set everything up to work. And if we're divided and we're at each other's throats and political upheaval is coming, he doesn't always have to just wave some kind of magic wand up in heaven. Sometimes it's like, hey, you're not following the order I set in line. But I think it can happen both ways. I think he does it both ways. So I can't control what he does, but I can control what I'm supposed to do.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. And judgment comes from God because of disobedience of man.
Yes.
And he delivers that judgment in his own way, in his own time. Okay, verse 7. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, come and see. So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, and by beasts of the earth. This is becoming ominous. I mean, this is sounding pretty serious. A fourth of the earth. Now, it doesn't say specifically a fourth of the population of the earth. It says a fourth of the earth. But I would assume if you were talking about a fourth of the earth, it would probably include roughly a fourth of the population. That's a lot of people that's going to die from something, one of these things. First of all, the pale. The Greek word for pale is the same word that leads us to chlorophyll. It's an indication of a color, green. Plants, grass, tree leaves, all get their color from chlorophyll. Well, the pale indicates that, we just recently started spring, when the leaves first pop out and they're just beginning, they're kind of a light green, lime green, new sprouts of grass start off. We had a bucket in the yard, a bucket that got turned upside down, just sitting on the ground as the grass is coming out. And we moved the bucket the other day, and there was these tall streams of grass that were just a pale looking green. That grass had sprouted up and couldn't find the sun, and it just kept growing as fast as it could to try to get to some sunlight to survive. And so it was funny because the grass around it was like this, and then this grass was that tall, and it was just, thread, light yellow, ugly looking stuff. But so that's where this pale, you think of death as someone who is pale, someone who's been in bond. That's the kind of image that you get from this. So let's recap. This is the fourth horse. We've had the white horse, who was offered a fake peace and tranquility. That I say fake because it doesn't turn out that peace and tranquility is true. It turns out quite the opposite. Then the red horse that would cause war between men killing men. That's been going on forever. Then the black horse causing death by lack of food and sustenance. Well, now here we're at the pale horse. The pale horse is going to deliver death by intention, by evil, an active murder of humans, of men. A fourth of the earth. If we were to take this as it's written, that means that in today's world of 8 billion people, that would be 2 billion people dying. That is so massive, we couldn't even comprehend that level of death. There's no single catastrophe that could create that many deaths. It would have to be something worldwide.
How much is Corona kill?
Hmm?
How much has the coronavirus killed? You have any idea?
A few million,
Okay.
but nowhere, less than 0.1% of the population. And I ran into my thoughts were, well, has anything like that ever happened on Earth? And believe it or not, there is a compilation of estimated world populations going all the way back to BC. But I looked at some of the information in it. In AD 70, at the time that the temple was destroyed and the atrocities were being committed against the Jews, the population was 200 and the estimated, and this is by 12 different scientific groups averaging their estimates of the population. In AD 70, the population was 250 million people. So it would have, a quarter of the Earth's population would have been 62.5 million people would have to die for it to be a quarter of the Earth. Well, the population didn't decrease in AD 70. It went up from 69 to 70 and 71 and 72. The population, in fact, since year one has increased every year. It's never gone down. It's always been up. If a quarter of the population disappeared or died, it would have dipped. And that's never happened according to recorded history. The Spanish flu in 1819, the population didn't decline. The millions of deaths in World War I and World War II, the population didn't decline, it kept rising. There was an estimated in the 1900s, the 20th century, there were 80 to 100 million people died from World War I, World War II, the Cultural Revolution in China, major deaths in that 100-year period, but the population never went down. It continued to decline. So anyway, I'm just saying that nothing at this level of drastic deaths has been recorded in history up to this time. So the pale horse, when he arrives on the scene, is going to be recognizable, I think. Now, there, like I said, there's people who take this as only symbolic, that it's not actually going to happen that a quarter of the population would die at any given time. But those are what the words say. Okay, any comments about that?
If this is gonna happen on a worldwide basis, we do have some local populations, not worldwide, but local populations. You know, probably Black Death and not worldwide again, but some examples of some pretty horrendous stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been like, and that bubonic plague, it wiped out a lot of people, and in like Europe, as it was going through Europe, it may have been a quarter of the people died. But that was in the 1300s, and I don't know that there was any connection between, I mean, it was a plague, and we're told that plagues and those things are going to happen, and we've seen examples of all of them over a period of time.
Well, you know, if their data collection wasn't any better than it's been with COVID, it could very well have been quite a mess.
Yeah.
Something you'd never know, you know, a number way beyond what's stated. So
I was reading that World War II, there was an estimated 70 to 85 million people that died, which was about 3% of the population at that time.
Yeah.
So to put a little bit of context to it, that was massive.
Yeah. Well, and that, you know, there was a book when I was in college that I wrote a paper on called The Population Bomb. And at that time, they were saying that, you know, the world would not be able to sustain itself and feed all the people if the growth of the population kept up the way it was. Fortunately, science and technology and God figured out a way to grow more food to feed us all. So we're still here.
I don't know if the Lord will be able to sleep tonight, worrying about how you're gonna feed all of us.
could I talk about that for just a second? I've been wondering, why does this war have such an effect, or apparently the potential to cause a famine worldwide? And I was just thinking, you know, the fertilizer supply going away, do all the GMO seeds and stuff, do they require fertilizer to grow? Because the seeds that God put on the earth didn't require fertilizer.
Okay, I got most of that, but the fertilizer, my understanding is that American crops, from corn to wheat to all of the modern crops, are fertilized pretty heavily. That's why if you want, you know, fertilizer free, naturally grown stuff, that costs 2 or 3 times as much, because it only, without fertilizer, the crops only produce a fraction of what they would with the fertilizer. So
Daddy had a different deal. He kept milk cows in the lot, and he had me go out there with 5-gallon buckets and spread it all over 10 acres. He thought that was well use of my time, and
shoveling.
Unbelievable hay grazer crop that particular year. It was didn't come from Russia. Come from the volume probably is not there, is what you're saying. And there used to be a guy that I knew that took fertilizer from the sewer plants out on farmlands. Until the environmentalists got a hold of that, and that wasn't kosher to do that.
Yeah,
They plowed it in.
yeah, and I don't know, it may be against modern health standards to use, you know, animal waste or human waste to fertilize. with today. I don't know that that's true, but it's possible that they'd say, no, you can't use that on commercial crops. But the fertilizer, the ingredients to make fertilizer, which we make in the United States, one of the primary ingredients of potash is only available from Belarus and parts of Russia. So without that key component, we can make fertilizer, but we have to import that from them. They're not exporting it now, they're at war. So not only are they the breadbasket of half the world, but that key ingredient of fertilizer is necessary for the rest of the world to make their own fertilizer to keep the production up on the crops. So it's going to have a worldwide effect.
Can I throw something out for Larry? Hey, Larry, you know I'm driving,
Yeah.
right? You know I'm driving a truck, right?
Right.
Well, everybody talk about the supply chain and all that. Our problem is our society's too efficient. Every industry, medical, trucking, food, it's all on the margin. So any change creates a medical crisis. Any change in drop in production, supply chain, or anything, it creates not a tiny difference, but a massive difference. So we got 3 days of supply of food in the United States right now. That's all we got, 3 days. 3 days it's gone. Everything on the shelf is gone in 3 days across the country. The truck stopped.
Wow.
So we're at a point where we're so efficient, we're at a tipping point, and things go out of balance. You don't fall a little bit, you fall a long way.
Yeah.
To follow up,
Cars. It's all
Most people don't have 3 days worth of food in their house.
exactly.
I mean, I marvel at people that can't go a day without going to the store. I'm thinking, I don't get that. But that's what the way the world we
Which-
live in.
Yeah, so if you got 3 days in your house and 3 days in the supply
store, yeah.
system, that's 6 days. Everybody is 6 days from starving.
You got all those
That's-
people wanna go and board because they don't have 3 days, and then that's what sucks it down even worse.
So, and to follow up on that, we just recently decided we needed to
Thanksgiving.
replace our 25-year-old bed. And so we shopped and picked the mattress that we want. And we said, okay, I don't need it delivered, I can pick it up. So where's the dock? I'll pick it up. Oh, no, we don't have mattresses here. Well, isn't this a mattress store? Yeah, but we just have the examples. We don't have actual mattresses. I said, okay, so where's the warehouse? I'll go to the warehouse to get it. We don't have a warehouse. I said, well, so where is this mattress I'm buying? Well, it hasn't been made yet.
Yeah.
They don't make the mattress until you order it. And then they send an email to the factory and say, okay, we need one of these mattresses built. And they build it and then deliver it. Like he said, there's nothing stocked or stored.
It's called
It's
just in time inventory.
just in time. We don't make it until you order and pay for it. So can you just, how hard is it to disrupt that supply line? Not hard at all. So anyway, we have created this world that is at the very least a house of cards that would take very little to disrupt and tear down. Okay, well, we didn't go very far, but we're at the 5th seal, so we will start that next time we get together. Appreciate you guys being here. and offering-
See ya.
and we'll see you next time.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi.
I love you.
You dog.
Hey, Eric. Yes, sir. I'll throw something out at you.
What's up?